Sitting on the sunset, bills on my mindset, I can't deny it. Getting higher than my income, income's breadcrumbs. I've been trying to survive. The glow that the sun gets right around sunset helps me realize that this is just a journey. Drop your worries, you are gonna turn out fine. Oh, you turn out fine. Fine, oh, you turn out fine. But you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. You gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey. I know it's hard to remember sometimes, but you gotta keep your head up, oh, and you can let your head down, hey, 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 hey. I got my hands in my pockets, kicking these rocks.
It is take 2. And hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen, all creatures great and small. We're going to do it one more time. This is episode 2 of the No Feet Survival Guide. I am your host, Mike Yankura. Well, I had tried to record this before, but somehow I messed it up. So I get to do this all over again. So consider what I did before rehearsal, so this will be the real McCoy this time. But welcome to the No Feet Survival Guide. Let me start off by saying thank you so much. We had 76 downloads for the first episode, which it's obviously not a whole lot, but I'm tickled pink that I got that many to start off the initial podcast. So I have a couple of goals in mind. From there is one, to do better each and every time, and to have one more download than I had the week prior. So here's hoping I get 77 downloads this week. And again, I went through a rehearsal of this exact same rant I'm about to go through now, so hopefully it's a little better than what it sounded like before. And it wasn't too bad, but yeah, I overrode it with something else, and so hopefully this is lesson learned, and it's right now just me and a microphone working this out for you. So, well, again, thank you so much for tuning in to us. A lot of development since the first podcast. I've made an email address for anybody who has questions, comments, criticisms, beeps, or complaints. The email address is going to be nofeetsg@gmail.com. So nofeetsg@gmail.com. Please let me know what you think of the show. Again, criticisms, beefs, complaints, and I'll even take the good stuff. So, but if you like the show, please let family, friends, total strangers, co-workers, shout it out from the rooftops to listen in, and hopefully people will continue to listen. So, I am also now officially on Spotify. So if you do have the Spotify app, go to the app and on the search button, No Feet Survival Guide, all separate words, and you should find a picture of my 2 Lieutenant Dan stumps on there, and you can listen in that way. I've applied to iHeartRadio, so hopefully they will accept this podcast, and if I do get on iHeartRadio, I'm going to put a personal challenge for a street fight with Ron Burgundy. I know he has his own podcast. They plug it all the time. And I'm ready to take him down. And prosthetics or no prosthetics, yeah, I'm going to take you out, Ron. So, but that's only if I get on iHeartRadio. We'll find out. And hopefully within the next couple of days that we can get on there and spread the word of the No Feet Survival Guide. But in light of that as well, we do have to pay bills here. So the recording does cost money. Eventually, Buzzsprout will be looking to charge for having this podcast on here. So, if you can, whatever you can give, that's always greatly appreciated. I am on Venmo, not PayPal, but it's under Michael Yankura. So please, I encourage anyone and everyone, if you can, to contribute to the show, because every little bit counts and everything is greatly, greatly appreciated. So with the first podcast in the books, I did get a lot of positive feedback on it, and nothing, well, there wasn't too many negative things. There was constructive criticism, so I will definitely take that over being bashed or what have you. So my second toughest critic is my nephew Tommy, 15 years old, just got his temps license, so I'm completely scared about that, but I definitely trust most of what he says as far as criticism goes. So, Tommy, I'm definitely listening to you. I'm keeping the title. I'm fighting you on that one, but everything else is well taken, and hopefully I can improve on that as these podcasts go along. So, but yeah, anybody who gave the constructive criticism, which was just about anybody who had any sort of critique of it, thank you so much for the input. One thing I've learned, and in the first podcast I did not go with any sort of outline. It was just kind of shooting from the hip, speaking from the heart, and for the most part it worked out well. But one thing that I realized is I tangent. So I kind of go off into these little sidebars and what have you. So hopefully I do have a general outline with some bullet points for this one. Hopefully it's a little better structured. So the first take, I veered a little bit, but not as much as I did the first one. So hopefully that's something with the improving as I go along with every podcast. So what I'd like to talk about today is some of the things I've gone through from my high school days up until right around 2010. The beginning of my health issues, which I guess for all intents and purposes has kind of been a lifelong challenge for me, but it became a lot more prevalent when I was in my late 20s, and I'll kind of go over that as we go along. But and to start off, I'm a big person. When I get my prosthetics, I'm going to be about 5'9", 5'10" or so, and I'm guessing right now I probably weigh somewhere in the range of 240 to 250, and that's obviously not the ideal weight for someone who's my height. I might, as Norm from Cheers once said, that might be my ideal weight if I was 9 feet tall. So, but yeah, I've always been a big person, and one thing that I kind of learned from an early age was to deflect the bullying that I experienced. And yeah, I don't really remember it too much through elementary school. It got more to high school and to college and what have you. And I suppose with me not having the best self-esteem around, and believe me, it took me 40 plus years to get the self-esteem that I have now, or else I wouldn't have had the cojones or the onions or what have you to tell you about it right now in this format. But yeah, not a whole lot of bullying in elementary school that I recall, just for the sheer fact that I had known my classmates since second grade. So there was that familiarity of going through 6 years of elementary school at St. Ambrose in Brunswick. And then I went to Catholic high school, and that was at Holy Name High School in Parma Heights. And for those who may not know, that's in the Cleveland area. Brunswick is a suburb of Cleveland in the next county down, Medina County. But Holy Name High School, it definitely ended up being a different atmosphere, because there were a few of my classmates from St. Ambrose who went to Holy Name, but as with any Catholic school or any private school, you got kids coming in from all over. So it was awkward for me, it was awkward for them, and yeah, I ended up being the subject of a little bit of bullying, not a whole ton, not as much as some other people had done. And it was one of those things where, yeah, I was still a big kid. I never played football, and in retrospect, I probably should have, just for the fact that, one, I would have been in a little better shape than what I am now, and two, there probably would have been a lot less bullying, even though there wasn't like a huge amount where it affected my psyche, I don't think. But one of the things that God blessed me with when going through those years was the deflection of the bullying. And a lot of times the way I did that was self-deprecation. They would sit there and say something, go, okay, you're right, and just kind of went on my way. And it does disarm the bullies sometimes. Sometimes they'll just egg it on, and yet there's ways to deal with it. But in my individual case, I just didn't hang out with that crowd, one, and two, I still had my friends at St. Ambrose, where we had a high school youth group, so I took a lot of comfort in that. And then going on to college, I went to the prestigious Youngstown State University, and again, not having played football and hitting the 300-pound mark, it was definitely a challenge in a lot of ways, and my self-esteem towards women was quite depleted. I mean, I could talk to them, but yeah, it was anything beyond that. It was like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. So I think I overcame a lot of the picking of my size to the self-deflection. And the biggest example that I could think of was when I was living in the dorms at Youngstown State. Someone had put a disparaging message on one of my dorm mates. Lived on the same floor as me, and he thought it looked like my handwriting when it wasn't. It was somebody else, obviously, and they took it upon themselves to basically litter the entire dorm with a cartoon picture of me with my belly hanging out of a shirt that was about 2 sizes too small, sweatpants, that sort of thing, because that's what I was wearing on the time. And that was the big bullying moment for me. And to say I was embarrassed was a complete understatement, but the instincts God gave me kind of took over, and I was like, yeah, how am I going to argue with that? So, one, it helped to deflect towards me, or take away the power that they tried to create over me by basically turning it in on myself and say, well, hey, you're not telling the people anything that I didn't already know. And two, it was one of those things where it disappeared after 2 or 3 days. And I did find out who ended up doing that, and it got worked out where, yeah, I think it dawned on him that I wasn't the one who made the disparaging remarks towards him. And we were never like super big friends before that or after that, and I'm not gonna mention his name because quite frankly, I don't. After that first or second year of college, I have no idea what happened to him. I'm kind of assuming he dropped out. I hadn't seen him on campus, so it worked itself out, and I was at peace with it. So, but moving on from college, I just kept eating and drinking the wrong things. And it got to the point where in 1994, after a couple years after I graduated, I ended up landing jobs at Gund Arena in Jacobs Field, which is now Quicken Loans Arena and Progressive Field. Those are in downtown Cleveland. Progressive Field is where the Indians play, and Quicken Loans is where the Cavs play, and the minor league hockey team at the time was the Lumberjacks. But I had ballooned up to about 400 pounds by the time I was working there. And you can imagine, well, one, me making bad decisions and just eating way too much. And just to kind of give you an example, I always tell people I could go to Burger King, order 4 Whoppers, and scarf them down in one sitting without even blinking an eye. So that's how my appetites were. Just the fact that I was drinking Kool-Aid, I was drinking pop, I was drinking beer when the time was necessary. Was never a heavy drinker, but yeah, still drank beer, and it was empty calories, so there you go. But just eating every possible thing that was bad for me. I think the closest vegetable or fruit I had was ketchup, and that's one of the reasons why I got up to about 400 pounds. So, fast forward, I was basically working summers at Jacobs Field and winters in Gund Arena, and it was basically I was working year-round, basically, at one venue or the other. And it was getting to a point where in 1998, I ended up getting super lethargic. And you can imagine why that was, because working night games for either the Cavs, the Lumberjacks, or the Indians, you get out of there you get to work about 4 or 5 o'clock, do your thing till about 10 or 11 o'clock. You might go to the bar, have a beer or two with the coworkers, go home. By then it's about 1:30. Fall asleep, and I was waking up at 9 or 10 in the morning. But by 1998, I felt like I could have slept for 3 days. And right around the spring of 1998, I just started getting very thirsty, where I could down a half gallon of orange juice and, again, not blink an eye. where I was just drinking all sorts of water and regular Mountain Dew, regular Pepsi, things along those lines. And at one point I was going to the bathroom every couple of hours. Then it was almost every hour. And then it was down to about almost every half hour. And I mean, it just wasn't like a regular session. I mean, it was a good long, felt like I was letting out about 2 gallons worth of liquid. So, just to kind of emphasize that point, I had a couple days off in the summer of '98 and decided to go to Youngstown to visit some friends of mine that I had hung out with when I was going to school there. And we decided to go to the Pirates game. And on the way down I-79 heading to Pittsburgh, I had to have my friend pull over basically between exits so I could run into the woods and go to the bathroom, because I had to go that bad or else I was going to have an accident. And again, it felt like a gallon's worth of liquid coming out. And again, this is the point I'm trying to make, is whenever there's something happening to your body that shouldn't be happening to your body, go see a medical professional right away. And you'll find out this is kind of a recurring theme with me, with my general stubbornness and my belief that body heal thyself, which a lot of times it does work, but in certain cases when you're not taking care of yourself in the first place, a lot of this stuff is going to haunt you in the end. So that's what ended up happening with me, and it culminated, I want to say it was late summer of '98, probably right around the end of August. But I had gone to a Saturday afternoon mass at St. Ambrose, and it felt like an out-of-body experience, and not the good kind. I mean, it felt like I was there, but I was kind of floating in empty space. And it was right then, and maybe again, this is God kind of hit me over the head with this, but yeah, go to the urgent care immediately. So I went there, and for those of you who are diabetic or who have loved ones who are diabetic, you kind of know what the good blood glucose level is. And for those who may not be aware, obviously it depends on the individual now, but my doctors have told me that a range of 100 to 150 is where I need to be. When I went to the urgent care, my blood glucose level was in the 600 or 700s. And I obviously joke about it now, but yeah, at the time it wasn't funny, but I always said, yeah, you probably could have cut me open and Mountain Dew would have been flowing out. So somehow I managed to get myself to the hospital where, yeah, I was officially diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. They basically gave me this plain food and water and got my blood sugar level down. And just kind of as an added addendum, I also ended up with blurry vision by the time I went to the urgent care, and thankfully that went away in a few days once my glucose level got down to a manageable level. So they did put me on some insulin to start off and some pills, and that's when I kind of got the little Christmas bulb lighting up above my head that, yeah, I've got to start changing my diet. And the two biggest things I ended up doing was to, one, cut my portions by at least half, and 2, finding out combining a starch and a protein to increase my metabolism. And again, it's different for different individuals, but for instance, I was finding out that eating turkey with potatoes sped up my metabolism. Chicken with pasta, things along those lines, where you could kind of feel your metabolism speeding up. And again, it's one of those trial and error things where you as an individual have to find out what kind of combination works for you. But, ultimately doing those 3 things, and I know people would be shocked to find out, I was ordering salads when I first got diagnosed, and, stuck to that fairly well for a few years, but it ended up that over the course of 3 years, I ended up going from 400 pounds down to about 225, 230. So, and I should have looked up the name of this movie on the second take here, but there was a movie with Catherine Zeta-Jones where they had her as a large person in her younger days, and she slimmed down, and Billy Crystal, I believe, was playing her agent or some friend, and he goes, "Oh, look, you've lost the whole Backstreet Boy." And that's one of the lines I use, so I'll give credit to Billy Crystal on that one, so he doesn't sue me for copyright infringement or anything like that. But yeah, I pretty much lost the Backstreet Boy, 175 pounds over 3 years, and I was feeling very good. And that got me to about 2000, 2001, where I got a job at a call center with a company called Integrated Marketing Technologies in Brunswick. And what they were was an outsourced company for about 40 different food and beverage companies, where you dealt with restaurants and food distributors and things along those lines. So, having the first shift job, I decided to venture into a new hobby, and that was community theater. And, putting it as bluntly as I can, in a lot of ways, community theater really saved my life, because it was such a joy just going through rehearsals, auditions, and then into the production, and just learning the basics of how a theater production comes together. And again, it wasn't anything professional or anything along those lines, but it was so much fun to entertain people, to be with theater people who were just so much fun to be around, and to know that we were, putting on a production, and we wanted to make sure that people were getting their money's worth. Now, this kind of brings me to another point, and to where I am here in the podcast world. The first production I ever did was at Brunswick Community Theater, and it was called Red Hot and Cole. And it was a musical review of Cole Porter songs. Now, I played Moss Hart, who was a playwright back in the era of Cole Porter. Excuse me, I had to take a sip of water, so the throat was getting a little dry. But, yeah, and pardon the expression, but I was the shits. And I was probably the drizzling shits back then, because in one production, in front of people, I maybe had 6 lines of dialogue with one of the other characters, and just completely blanked out. So, and for anybody who thinks that's never happened to certain actors, it has to one extent or another to just about every actor out there, whether you're getting paid $1 million or doing it for the love of theater. But that was a good impetus for me to, one, learn the craft a little bit better, and two, to give myself the discipline to get my lines down as best I can. So my second production was A Miracle on 34th Street at Brecksville Theater on the Square. And the director there, his name was Terry Benke. And I have to give him all the credit in the world for teaching me what acting worked best for me. And what he basically told me is kind of the opposite of what community theater in general teaches, because community theater teaches you, hey, learn your lines and then develop your character. Well, what Terry ended up teaching me was, hey, think about your character. He would tell me, or he would ask me, what do you think your character is? And I played the guy who prosecutes Santa Claus in this particular production. What do you think your character is? Where did he go to school? What's his background? Everything about his life. And then he kind of gave his perception of it. And it was learning off of each other that helped me develop my character. And then my lines ended up being very easy to learn from there. And hopefully, when I have directed productions of my own, one of the big things I like to do is just find out what the actor playing that role thinks their character is, and trying to give them a good sense of what they are, and it makes their lines a lot easier to read. So much credit goes to Terry for that, and I went on from there. It was definitely a labor of love. Particularly for the time I had in Cleveland. I've ended up doing probably around 40 productions in total since 2001. The vast majority of them up in Cleveland. I've done a few down here in Columbus and have just enjoyed it thoroughly. And the lesson from that is do things that you love and be with things that you love, because it just makes life so much simpler and easier, and you won't believe how much a lot of other things can fall into place. Because my love for theater, it helped me enjoy my job that much more because I was a happier person. And if you love your job, if it doesn't feel like work to you, it's unbelievable how much other things can fall into place. And the one thing you want to do is, one, live a happy life, and two, use your gifts that God has given you. And when you love something that you do, it's the gifts that God gave you. And it helped me enormously. And one of the things community theater did for me was it introduced me to OCTA, which is the Ohio Community Theater Association. And what they are is a band of about 120 or so theaters, community theaters throughout Ohio, and some in the bordering states if you're within a certain parameter from the state of Ohio. But I eventually got to sit on the board of OCTA and just met so many wonderful people, great friends that I have to this day. Unfortunately, some have passed on, either giving up their physical body or losing touch with them over the years, but there are still some great friends out there, and I'm so appreciative of that. And that love just helped me so much throughout the 2000s. And, again, I think it's one of those things where it literally saved my life. And, again, the lesson on that, do what you love. Because God puts that talent, that spirit of service in your heart. And if you love what you do, then, like I said, there's a lot of things that just fall into place. And I'm kind of looking at my notes right now, so I'm cheating a little bit. Don't tell anyone. But, my theater career continued once I moved down into Columbus. And at that point, my left foot had been amputated, and that'll be something I go into in the next episode. If I'm able to upload this, you never know. But just community theater once again saved me after my amputation, just for being able to land a role. In this case, it was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And it was such a godsend. And, things were just going great for me at that point. I had a job that I really liked. I was involved in community theater. And things go well until they don't. But, again, we'll go over a lot of that as this goes along. But, speaking of things that I love, my next podcast will be recorded the evening of July 4th, going into July 5th, because I have decided for these podcasts, I hope that people will want to listen in on Monday mornings and have that little bit of inspiration if they don't like their job, or if there's some sort of challenge or adversity that they're facing. Hopefully they listen to this and go, hey, that guy got through with that. I can do this too. So hopefully I get to be a little beacon of hope for somebody out there, as well as this being cathartic for me. But again, I'm tangenting a little bit. One of the things I am grateful for and that I absolutely love is that God has blessed me with having me be born in the greatest country in the history of the world. And I realize that there's going to be some of you out there who don't think so, that America is somehow inherently evil, that it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, whatever your picadillos are with this country. And I will respond this way. This is not a perfect country. There is no such thing as a perfect country. People want that, and that's utopia, and that doesn't exist. Only heaven is perfect. We are flawed. But what I will say is, the founding fathers had enough foresight to realize there's issues going into writing the Declaration of Independence, that there's always going to be some sort of issues in terms of how people are treated. But I defy you to find another place on this earth that you have the opportunity to make this country better, to make your society better, to make your neighborhood better. You can't find that anywhere on earth like you do here in the United States of America. And as great as there's a lot of great countries out there, but for whatever it's worth, this is the best game in town. They do their best to rectify their mistakes, and hopefully that will come to pass fairly quickly. So, happy birthday to the United States of America, because this is the true birthday of the country. This is the one we need to emphasize and celebrate, as great as some other holidays are, and a lot are more, I would say, worldwide holidays or religious holidays, as opposed to a truly American holiday as Independence Day. Because without it, whatever mistakes were made, they may have never been corrected. They may have been corrected eventually. But, without the Founding Fathers, this podcast probably doesn't happen. The freedoms we experience more than any other country probably aren't going to happen. And I hope we continue to fight for those freedoms and, just be decent to each other, so that we can keep these freedoms and let them know, hey, these freedoms are here for a reason. And I believe they're good reasons. And I hope we can continue on that path despite a lot of what's happening in our country and in our world. So I just want to say, God bless you for listening in to us. God bless the United States of America, and God bless our world, that we can exercise freedom, that we can remove any sort of hatred that may be in our hearts, whether it's for a group of people or an individual, that we show kindness and decency to our fellow humans. So again, I want to thank you for listening in to us. Again, this one was a little bit shorter than the original one that I apparently accidentally erased. But once again, if you have any questions, comments, criticisms, beefs, or complaints, the new email is nofeetsg@gmail.com. So nofeetsg@gmail.com. On the Buzzsprout website, there are links to my Facebook, to my Twitter, to my Instagram. So you may leave comments there. Again, bills will need to be paid for keeping this show on. So if you do wish to donate, I'll likely be making a separate one soon for the podcast. But you can contribute to Venmo. And again, my name is Michael Yancur. You can find me there. Any and all donations would be appreciated. And again, if there are any sponsors out there, I've been told I have a pretty good radio voice, so hopefully I can give you guys a good plug, and you can sponsor the show, and hopefully, once again, making it cathartic for me, but also to help those out there who may be sad or in despair and think they're facing insurmountable odds. But I'm here to tell you that one way or another, with faith, with a positive attitude, with love, you too can get through this. Whether you're facing a health challenge, loss of a loved one, difficulties with work or personal relationships, you can get through this. So, thank you very much for listening, and please remember to be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.